Over on Gator 9, a new NFL video is out. In this video, we talk about the career of Oakland Raiders quarterback Daryle Lamonica, and how in 1969, he was bedridden just hours before the game, and somehow, with a 103-degree fever, threw 3 touchdown passes a few hours later. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. One of the crazier stories in the history of the NFL playoffs comes from the 1976 postseason, when the Pittsburgh Steelers played the Baltimore Colts in the divisional round. The game itself was rather uneventful. The Steelers won 40-14 in an absolute blowout, where Steelers quarterback Terry Bradshaw finished the game with a perfect passer rating, and where the Steelers outgained the Colts 526-170 in total yardage, more than tripling their output. However, the crazy part about this game is that this blowout and this exact set of circumstances ended up saving lives, because shortly after the game ended, a plane crashed into the top section of the Memorial Stadium stands. Fortunately, no fans got injured during this madness, and the guys at Secret Base did a phenomenal video on this that goes in depth about the whole incident. But the crazy part is that if this game was close, the stands would have been packed, and people would have gotten injured and died. However, because the game was an absolute massacre, with the Steelers winning it by 26 points, or 4 possessions, the stands had emptied out by that point. If any part of this game turned out differently, such as the game taking longer to complete, or the game being closer, or the Colts being the ones doing the blowing out, history would have changed forever, and it would have been one of the most tragic disasters in American sports history. So why do I bring this up? Because as it turns out, there was a similar thing that happened back in 1981 involving the World Series and a baseball playoff game. There was a disaster that took place at Yankee Stadium on the night of Wednesday, October 21st, during a game between the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. However, odds are, you've never heard of it before. And that's because nobody got injured, with tragedy being avoided by the skin of the stadium's teeth. Because this is the story behind the forgotten disaster at the 1981 World Series. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to understand what happened during the game, and why exactly it was so bizarre that it played out this way. It's October 21st, 1981, and it's Game 2 of the World Series between the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Yankees have a 1-0 lead in the series, after winning 5-3 the previous day. Now, a win here puts them up 2-0, and puts them in an incredible spot to win what would be the team's 23rd title in franchise history, since coming back from a 2-0 deficit, while not impossible, is awfully tricky. In the history of the World Series at that point, only 6 times had a team come back from being down 2-0. Oddly enough, the last time it happened, it was the Yankees who did it back in 1978 against the Dodgers. However, for the most part, if you've got a 2-0 lead, you're in a pretty good spot. So this was a big one for the Yanks before they went and played the next 3 games in Los Angeles. As for the game itself, well, it was more of the same for the Yankees. After the pitching staff dominated the previous night, allowing just 5 hits, and with starter Ron Guidry allowing no runs in 7 innings of work, the pitching dominated again, allowing just 4 hits while allowing no runs. Just like the previous night, when eventual Hall of Famer Goose Gossage got the save after allowing 1 hit and striking out 2 batters in 2 innings of work, Gossage did his thing yet again tonight, as he once again went 2 innings, allowing just 1 hit and recording 3 strikeouts, including the final out of the game. Tommy John was dominant on the mound to start off, going 7 innings and allowing 3 hits with no walks, and Gossage was in to finish things off. They only had to use 2 pitchers. And when all was said and done, the Yankees prevailed, winning the game 3-0, thanks to 1 run in the 5th inning on a Larry Milbourne double, and 2 runs in the 8th inning, with 1 coming on a Bob Watson single, and the other coming on a sacrifice fly by Willie Randolph. The win sent the 56,505 fans in attendance home happy, as they were now just 2 wins away from yet another World Series title. However, there's something else that's particularly notable about the game, and that was how quickly it was played. And by that, I mean that this game was unusually fast. For some perspective, the previous year, in 1980, the Kansas City Royals played the Philadelphia Phillies in the World Series, and the Phillies won that series 4-2. 4 of the 6 games took at least 3 hours to complete. The average time of the game was 2 hours and 59 minutes, with the quickest game, which was Game 4, clocking in at 2:37, and the longest game, which was the 10-inning affair in Game 3, clocking in at 3:19. In 1979, it was a very similar situation during the World Series between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Baltimore Orioles, which the Pirates won 4-3. Every game took at least 2 hours and 30 minutes to complete, and 3 of them clocked in at over 3 hours and 10 minutes. The average length of the game during the series was 3 hours and 4 minutes. In fact, prior to Game 2 of the 1981 World Series, the last 17 World Series games had clocked in at a time of at least 2 hours and 30 minutes. Here they all are, charted out on a graph. You can see that, for the most part, games are hovering around the 3-hour mark, and you can bet that television plays a part in that. So why do I bring this up? Because Game 2 was unusually short. This game was the first time in a handful of years that a World Series game clocked in at under 2 hours and 30 minutes, as this game was just 2 hours and 29 minutes long. That's 149 minutes. That's it. That's awfully short for a World Series game, and it makes sense as to why. For starters, they didn't have to play a bottom of the 9th inning, so that alone is eliminating 10 or so minutes. There also wasn't a lot of offense, as you had 6 half innings that were 1, 2, 3 innings, as well as quite a few more that consisted of just 4 batters. Only once was there a pitching change in the middle of an inning, as that was when Dave Stewart came into the game midway through the bottom of the 8th for the Dodgers. All of these things save a ton of time and made this game fly by, which will become incredibly important, incredibly fortunate, and incredibly lucky in just a moment. Because after the game, disaster struck the stadium. Sometime after the game, in the interview room, a fire broke out. We don't know what exactly started the fire. However, what we do know is that stadium officials later declared that nothing about this fire was suspicious, so it was not caused by any human error, or negligence, or intent, or arson of any kind. At first, the fire started off small, with stadium personnel trying to douse the blaze with the fire extinguishers that they had available at their disposal. But the fire extinguishers were not enough, as the fire grew so large, and there was so much smoke coming out, that the fire department had to be summoned. In total, 27 firefighters, along with 3 engines, 2 trucks, and a battalion chief were there at the scene, trying to get the fire out, which lasted for a full 45 minutes. And the fire forced everyone in the stadium, from reporters to personnel, to evacuate. In total, about 100 people were inside Yankee Stadium when the fire happened, and had to leave the premises. But this fire wasn't just contained to the interview room, although that's where the bulk of the damage happened. The fire and the smoke from it spread to the corridors, the clubhouse, and even the field itself. By the time the firefighters responded, arrived on the scene, and put out the fire, nobody got injured, nobody died, and nobody got hurt. The crisis was averted, which is crazy, because as one reporter, who was one of the 100 people there, said on this, the blaze is tremendous. But remember what I said about the length of the game, and how unusually short it was? By the time that the fire happened, none of the fans were still left in the stadium, and none of the players were left. Yankee Stadium which had about 60,000 people in it just moments before, minus a handful of people, was virtually unoccupied. Let's say that game runs the length of a regular World Series game at the time, and runs somewhere in that 3-hour range. Players would still be in the clubhouse conducting interviews and cleaning up and getting ready to hop on the plane to Los Angeles. Fans might still be in the stadium and lingering around the venue. More media members and personnel would still be there, doing live shots and preparing their packages. And if this game went extra innings, who knows what would have happened, since the corridors were filled entirely with black smoke, and it took a whole 45 minutes for the fire to be put out, which is an eternity when dealing with something like that. If Game 2 of the 1981 World Series ran any longer than it actually did, we would have had an absolute crisis on our hands, and that's putting it lightly. We would have had a disaster in the making, where fans and players could have been seriously hurt and injured. Instead, this is just a footnote, nothing more, and this is probably the first time that you're hearing of this. Even though the Yankees would eventually lose this World Series and would lose that 2-0 lead by falling 4-2 at the hands of the Dodgers, the Yankees not just winning Game 2, but winning it in the manner that they did might have been, considering the circumstances of what happened afterwards, the biggest win of the entire series. The Yankees winning this game without having to go to a bottom of the ninth inning, winning by only using 2 pitchers and by not making any mid-inning changes, winning without any weather delays, and winning with just enough offense, but not too much, literally saved lives. If even one of these things plays out differently, we're looking at a completely different situation. Because on Wednesday, October 21st, 1981, the pitching staff for the Yankees wasn't the only thing in Yankee Stadium that was on fire. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.